Every single morning, millions of Americans over the age of 50 are starting their day in a way that could be quietly feeding cancer cells inside their bodies. And the terrifying part is that most of them have absolutely no idea it's happening. You wake up, you do your routine, you feel fine, and you assume that fine means healthy, but fine. And healthy are two very different things, especially when it comes to cancer, and especially after the age of 50, when your body's natural defenses begin to slow down and the risk starts climbing in ways that most doctors never fully explain to their patients. I want to ask you something personal right now. When was the last time you thought about what you do in the first 30 minutes after waking up, and whether those habits are helping your body fight disease or making it easier for cancer to take hold? Because what happens in those early morning hours before breakfast, before your first cup of coffee, before you even check your phone, those moments are actually one of the most powerful windows of opportunity your body has for either fighting off cancer or becoming more vulnerable to it. And today I'm going to show you exactly what to do with that window. I'm Dr. Sarah Brooks. I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years, and today I dedicate my work entirely to helping seniors live healthier, longer lives. And one of the things I am most passionate about is cancer prevention, because I have watched too many of my patients receive diagnoses that could have been delayed or even prevented if they had known what I'm about to share with you today. So stay with me, because this information is genuinely life changing, and it could be the most important thing you watch all week. You are not alone in this fear. According to the American Cancer Society, more than 60% of all new cancer diagnoses in the United States occur in people who are 50 years of age or older, and the risk continues to increase with every passing year. That means if you're watching this right now and you're over 50, cancer prevention isn't something you can afford to put on the back burner. It needs to be part of your daily life starting today. And the beautiful thing, the thing that gives me so much hope when I talk to my patients, is that it does not have to be complicated. In fact, the habit I'm going to share with you today takes less than 10 minutes and costs almost nothing, and the science behind it is absolutely extraordinary. But before I get to that, I need to tell you something that most oncologists don't talk about in a standard 15-minute office visit. Most people think about cancer as something that either happens to you or it doesn't. Like you either have bad genes or you don't, like it's mostly out of your control. And yes, genetics play a role, but here is what the research is actually showing us. According to studies published by the National Cancer Institute, lifestyle factors account for somewhere between 40 and 70% of cancer risk. That means the choices you make every single day, including what you do first thing in the morning, have a massive impact on whether cancer develops in your body or not. That is not a small number. That is not a footnote. That is the headline that every American over 50 needs to hear loud and clear. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. What does your morning actually look like? Most of my patients, when I ask them this question, describe something like this. The alarm goes off, they reach for their phone, they scroll through news or social media for a few minutes, they get up, maybe drink a cup of coffee right away, skip breakfast or grab something quick and processed, and then rush into their day. And I understand that completely, because life is busy and mornings are hectic, but what I just described is actually a sequence of habits that creates the worst possible internal environment for cancer prevention, and I'll explain exactly why that is in just a moment. If any of this sounds familiar to you right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, because I want to make sure this information reaches as many seniors across America as possible, and your support genuinely helps us do that. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body in the morning and why it matters so much for cancer risk. During the night, while you sleep, your body goes through a remarkable process of cellular repair and immune function. Your immune system is actually most active during sleep, and one of its most important jobs is identifying and destroying abnormal cells, including cells that could potentially become cancerous. This is something your body does naturally every single night, and it is one of the most miraculous things about human biology. But here's the critical part. When you wake up, your body is in a state of physiological transition, and what you do in those first 30 to 60 minutes either supports that immune function and continues the repair process, or it disrupts it and leaves you more vulnerable. When you immediately reach for your phone and start consuming stressful news or social media, your cortisol levels spike sharply. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, and in small doses, it's absolutely necessary. But when it spikes first thing in the morning, before your body has had a chance to fully wake up and stabilize, it creates a state of chronic low grade inflammation throughout your body. And inflammation, as oncologists have been saying for years, is one of the primary drivers of cancer development and progression. The research is very clear on this. Chronic inflammation creates an environment where abnormal cells can multiply and spread more easily. And when your cortisol is elevated consistently, your immune system becomes less effective at doing its job of catching and destroying those cells before they become a problem. And then there is the issue of dehydration. After 7 or 8 hours of sleep, your body is significantly dehydrated. And many Americans walk into their morning in a dehydrated state and stay that way for hours because they reach for coffee first, which actually increases dehydration rather than solving it. Dehydration at the cellular level slows down your body's detoxification processes, which means that cellular waste products and potentially harmful compounds that your body should be flushing out are staying in your tissues longer and creating more opportunity for cellular damage. And that cellular damage over time is exactly how cancer begins. I remember a patient of mine, a 68-year-old woman named Margaret from Tennessee, who came to see me a few years ago for a general wellness checkup. And when I asked her about her morning routine, she described almost exactly what I just outlined. Phone first, then coffee, then a granola bar from a box, and then rushing out the door. She had a strong family history of colorectal cancer, and she was genuinely frightened about her own risk. So we worked together on transforming just her morning habits. Nothing dramatic, no expensive supplements, no complicated protocols, just a few simple evidence based changes to the first 30 minutes of her day. And when she came back 6 months later, her inflammatory markers had dropped significantly. Her energy was better than it had been in a decade. And she told me with tears in her eyes that she finally felt like she was doing something real to protect herself. That is what this is about. So let's get into the actual morning habit that the research supports most strongly for cancer prevention after 50. And I want to be very specific because vague advice like eat healthy and reduce stress is not helpful. You deserve real, actionable information, and that is exactly what I'm going to give you. The number one morning habit for reducing cancer risk after 50 begins before you even get out of bed. And it is something called intentional hydration. And I know that might sound almost too simple, but stay with me because the science here is genuinely remarkable. The moment you wake up, before your phone, before your coffee, before anything else, your first action should be to drink a full 16 ounces of water. And not just any water, but water with a specific combination of additions that dramatically amplify its cancer protective effects. And I'll give you the exact recipe in just a moment. Here is why this works at a biological level. When you are dehydrated, your lymphatic system, which is essentially your body's internal sewage system and a critical component of your immune defense, slows down significantly. The lymphatic system is responsible for transporting white blood cells throughout your body, and those white blood cells include natural killer cells, which are literally named for their ability to identify and destroy cancer cells. When your lymphatic system is sluggish from dehydration, your natural killer cells cannot circulate effectively, and that means abnormal cells have a better chance of surviving and multiplying. Drinking 16 ounces of water first thing in the morning essentially jumpstarts your lymphatic system back into full activity and restores your immune surveillance function after the overnight period. But here is where it gets even more powerful, and this is what I call Dr. Brooks's morning protocol. The water should not be plain. You are going to add 3 specific ingredients that have some of the strongest cancer protective evidence in the entire nutritional science literature, and together they create what I think of as a morning shield for your body. The first ingredient is fresh lemon juice, about half a lemon squeezed directly into your water. Lemons are rich in compounds called flavonoids and limonoids, and the research on these compounds is fascinating. Studies published in peer-reviewed oncology journals have found that limonoids can actually inhibit the growth of cancer cells in laboratory settings. And epidemiological studies show that populations with high citrus consumption have significantly lower rates of certain cancers, including cancers of the digestive tract and breast tissue. Beyond that, lemon juice creates a slightly alkaline environment in your body after it is metabolized, and many researchers believe that cancer cells have a harder time thriving in a more alkaline internal environment. The lemon also provides vitamin C, which is a powerful antioxidant that protects your DNA from damage. And DNA damage is the very first step in the development of most cancers. The second ingredient is a quarter teaspoon of turmeric. And if you have been paying attention to cancer research over the last decade, you probably already know that turmeric is one of the most studied natural compounds in oncology right now. The active compound in turmeric is called curcumin, and the evidence for its cancer protective properties is truly impressive. Curcumin has been shown in hundreds of studies to inhibit multiple molecular pathways involved in cancer cell growth and survival, to reduce systemic inflammation, to enhance the activity of your immune system, and to actually trigger a process called apoptosis in cancer cells, which is essentially programmed cell death, where abnormal cells are instructed to destroy themselves. The challenge with turmeric is that curcumin on its own is not easily absorbed by the body, but when you add a tiny pinch of black pepper to your morning drink, the compound in black pepper called piperine increases the bioavailability of curcumin by up to 2,000% according to published research. And that is a number I want you to let sink in for a moment. 2,000%. That tiny pinch of black pepper transforms your turmeric from a modest health boost into a genuinely powerful cancer-fighting compound. The third ingredient is raw organic honey, just half a teaspoon. And I know some of you might be thinking about sugar and blood sugar, but here is why this is different. Raw organic honey, unlike processed sugars, contains a rich array of enzymes, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory compounds, including something called caffeic acid, phenylethyl ester, or KP, which has been studied specifically for its ability to inhibit the growth of cancer cells. Raw honey also supports your gut microbiome, which brings me to something critically important that I want to spend a few minutes on because most people don't realize how deeply connected gut health and cancer risk actually are. So, your morning protocol is this: 16 ounces of warm water, juice of half a fresh lemon, quarter teaspoon of turmeric, a small pinch of black pepper, and half a teaspoon of raw organic honey. And you drink this as the very first thing you do after waking up, and you do it every single morning. You can find all of these ingredients at any Walmart, Kroger, or Whole Foods across America for just a few dollars total. And this one habit done consistently can genuinely shift your cancer risk profile in a measurable way. I have had patients check their inflammatory markers before starting this protocol, and again 3 months later, and the reductions are consistently impressive. Now, let me talk about the second piece of this morning habit because hydration is the foundation, but there is a second component that is equally powerful, and it has to do with movement. And I promise you, this is not what you think it is. I am not talking about going to the gym at 6 in the morning or running 5 miles before breakfast. What the research shows is that a specific type of gentle morning movement done within the first 30 minutes of waking has a profound effect on cancer fighting gene expression in your body. And this is one of the most exciting areas of cancer prevention research right now. The field is called epigenetics, and what it tells us is that your genes are not fixed in the way we used to think. You carry certain genetic predispositions, yes, but whether those genes get switched on or off is dramatically influenced by your lifestyle choices, and morning movement is one of the most powerful switches we know of. Studies at major research institutions, including Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic, have found that as little as 10 to 15 minutes of moderate movement in the morning activates what are called tumor suppressor genes, which are essentially your body's built-in cancer prevention mechanisms. These genes produce proteins that monitor cell division and destroy abnormal cells before they can multiply, and when you exercise even gently, these genes become more active and more effective. What I recommend for my patients over 50 is a 10-minute morning movement sequence that I call the cellular activation walk. And it is exactly what it sounds like. After drinking your morning protocol, you go outside, if possible, or walk around your home, and you walk at a comfortable but slightly brisk pace for 10 minutes. Not power walking, not jogging, just a purposeful, gentle walk that gets your blood moving, your lymphatic system circulating, and your body temperature slightly elevated. The reason I specifically recommend going outside when possible is that morning light exposure has its own separate cancer protective mechanism through vitamin D synthesis and through the regulation of your circadian rhythm, which has been directly linked to immune function and cancer risk in multiple large-scale studies. I had a patient, a 72-year-old retired teacher named Harold from the suburbs of Chicago, who told me he hadn't walked outside in the morning for years because winters in Illinois are brutal, and I completely understand that. So we adapted his routine. On nice days, he walks outside for 10 minutes. On cold or rainy days, he walks the length of his hallway and living room at a purposeful pace for 10 minutes while listening to something uplifting on the radio. The point is the movement and the habit, not the scenery. And Harold told me at his last appointment that this simple change made him feel more alert, more energized, and gave him a sense of control over his health that he hadn't felt in years. And that psychological sense of empowerment is actually itself cancer protective because chronic hopelessness and depression have been shown to suppress immune function in measurable ways. Now, I want to go deeper on something that I think is the most underappreciated piece of the cancer prevention puzzle for Americans over 50, and that is the relationship between your morning cortisol pattern and your long term cancer risk. Here is what happens biologically. In a healthy person, cortisol naturally peaks about 20 to 30 minutes after waking in a process called the cortisol awakening response. And this peak is actually healthy and necessary. It energizes you, sharpens your focus, and prepares your immune system for the day. But here is the problem. In people who immediately expose themselves to stressful stimuli in the morning, whether that is alarming news headlines, stressful emails, or even the anxiety of scrolling through social media, that natural cortisol peak gets amplified and extended in an unhealthy way. And over time, this pattern of chronic morning cortisol elevation literally reshapes your immune system in ways that increase cancer susceptibility. The simple solution is what I call a protected morning window, and it is the third component of this morning habit, and in some ways, it is the most important. For the first 20 to 30 minutes after you wake up, you do not look at your phone. You do not turn on the news. You do not check email. Instead, you use that time for your hydration protocol, your 10-minute walk, and what I call intentional calm, which can be as simple as sitting quietly with your warm morning drink, doing 3 minutes of slow, deep breathing, or spending a few moments thinking about something you are genuinely grateful for. Gratitude practice in the morning has been shown in research from the University of California to measurably lower cortisol levels and to improve natural killer cell activity. And again, we come back to those natural killer cells, which are your frontline defense against cancer. This protected morning window concept is something that I wish I could prescribe to every American over 50 like a medication because the evidence for its impact on immune function and long term disease risk is genuinely compelling. One of the most striking studies I have come across was a long term population study that followed adults over 50 for more than a decade and found that those who reported consistent morning routines with low stress morning habits had significantly lower rates of several types of cancer, including colorectal, breast, and prostate cancer, compared to those who reported chaotic or high stress morning routines. Now, correlation is not causation. And I always tell my patients that, but when you combine that kind of epidemiological data with the cellular and molecular research we have on cortisol, inflammation, and immune function, the picture becomes very clear. If you are finding this information helpful and you want access to even more detailed protocols, personalized home remedy guides, and in depth health advice that goes beyond what I can cover in a single video, I want to invite you to become a member of our channel. Our members get exclusive access to content that dives much deeper into cancer prevention, heart health, brain health, and all of the things that matter most to seniors who want to stay vibrant and independent for as long as possible. You can find the membership option right below this video, and I would love to have you join our community. Now, let me tell you about the third and, in many ways, most powerful component of this morning cancer prevention system, and it has to do with what you eat in the first meal of your day. I know we've been focusing on what you do before breakfast, but breakfast itself is enormously important, and I want to be very specific because when I ask my patients what they eat for breakfast, the answers are often deeply concerning from a cancer prevention standpoint. Sugary cereals, white toast with butter, processed orange juice from a carton, pastries, even seemingly healthy options like flavored yogurt cups that are loaded with added sugar. And here is why this matters so much. Cancer cells have a fundamentally different metabolism than healthy cells. They rely almost exclusively on glucose, simple sugars, as their primary fuel source in a process that was first described by the Nobel Prize winning scientist Otto Warburg nearly 100 years ago and is still one of the most important concepts in oncology today. When you eat a high sugar, high glycemic breakfast, you cause a rapid spike in blood glucose and insulin, and that spike essentially provides a generous fuel supply to any abnormal or precancerous cells in your body. It also triggers an inflammatory cascade, suppresses certain aspects of immune function, and creates oxidative stress in your cells, all of which are conditions that favor cancer development. And the thing is, this happens every single morning for millions of Americans who are unknowingly feeding exactly the cellular environment that cancer needs to thrive. What I recommend instead is what I call Dr. Brooks's anti-cancer breakfast, and it follows three simple principles: high fiber, healthy fat, and plant-based antioxidants. Let me give you a very specific and easy example that you can make at home with ingredients from any American grocery store. Start with a half cup of rolled oats. Not instant oats because they have a much higher glycemic index, but real rolled oats that you cook for 5 minutes on the stove. Oats contain a specific type of soluble fiber called beta glucan that has been extensively studied for its immune modulating properties and its ability to enhance the activity of natural killer cells. Then add a generous handful of fresh or frozen blueberries because blueberries are one of the most antioxidant dense foods on earth, and the specific compounds in them called anthocyanins have been shown in multiple studies to inhibit the growth of cancer cells and reduce DNA damage. Then add a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, which is rich in compounds called lignans that have specific cancer protective properties, particularly for hormone sensitive cancers like breast and prostate cancer. Top it with a small handful of walnuts, which provide omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammation and have been independently associated with reduced cancer risk in population studies. This breakfast takes less than 10 minutes to prepare, costs just a couple of dollars, and contains more cancer-fighting compounds per bite than almost any supplement you could buy at your local CVS or Walgreens. And the difference in how your blood sugar responds compared to a bowl of sweetened cereal is dramatic. Instead of a spike and crash that feeds cancer cells and suppresses your immune system, you get a slow, steady release of energy that keeps your immune function strong and your inflammation low throughout the entire morning. I want to share something with you now that I think about often as someone who has dedicated her career to helping seniors stay healthy, and that is the concept of compounding health. We talk about compounding interest in finance, where small, consistent investments grow into something extraordinary over time, and the same principle applies perfectly to these morning habits. Drinking your hydration protocol today, taking your 10-minute walk tomorrow, protecting your morning window next week. These things might seem small in isolation, but when you do them consistently every morning for weeks and months and years, the cumulative effect on your body's cancer defenses is remarkable. Your immune system gets stronger, your inflammation decreases, your cellular repair processes become more efficient, your natural killer cell activity increases, your tumor suppressor genes stay more active. All of these changes are happening quietly at the cellular level every single day that you commit to these habits, and over time they add up to a significantly different risk profile.